and welcome to another episode of Going Pro, a podcast in which we discuss how to make a living as a professional photographer by examining the lives, careers, and creative habits of professionals at every level of experience, as well as the creative producers, art directors, and photo editors that hire them. I'm your host, Brad Vasallo. Back in the fall of 2020, I made the difficult decision to leave a very secure but soul-sucking job in city government to pursue photography as a career. This show is my excuse to ask the people I respect and admire how they have navigated various stages of their own career. In this episode, I talked to Jody MacDonald. As an award-winning photographer, Jody is no stranger to adventure and exploration in the last untamed corners of the planet. Having spent her formative years in Saudi Arabia before sailing around the world twice over the span of a decade on a kiteboarding, sailing, surfing, and paragliding expedition on board a 60-foot catamaran, she has traveled to over 100 countries in search of the unknown. From train hopping in the Sahara to paragliding in the Himalayas at 17,000 feet, she is passionate about stepping off the beaten path in pursuit of documenting issues that blend insightful storytelling, big adventure expeditions, and social change inspiration in the hopes of promoting the preservation of wild places. Recently, Men's Journal named her one of the 25 most adventurous women in the past 25 years, and she has had the opportunity to speak on the TEDx stage. She has worked on prominent campaigns with companies such as Disney, HP, Ford, and Leica. You can see her images in many international publications such as National Geographic, Red Bull, Outside, BBC, Patagonia, Islands, and Men's Journal, as well as many others. So with that, please enjoy my conversation with Jody MacDonald. All right, so Jody, welcome. It is a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. And I believe a belated happy birthday is in order?
Yeah, yesterday.
Awesome. So what is someone like you who enjoys, so much adventure, spend their birthday doing?
Yeah, I mean, a little disappointing, I think, from what other people might expect. But yeah, no, I think it's kind of nice just to hang out with friends and relax and have a pretty chill day. Eat good food, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Well, I do have to say it's a little bit surreal for me to be able to talk to you because, in my eyes, you're Jody MacDonald, the National Geographic photographer. And for a lot of people, I think that grew up taking pictures, that's kind of the pinnacle of it all, right? So I'm curious if you could tell me about that journey for yourself and however direct or meandering it may be. How did you get to where you are now in your career?
I think it, to be honest, probably really started in my childhood when I look back at it. My favorite classes in school were always art and phys ed. I just loved those two classes. And then when I was 3, I ended up moving to Saudi Arabia. My dad worked for a Canadian telephone company, and they got a big contract to move over there and help set up the telephone system. And my parents had never traveled anywhere, and you get a lot of perks when you kind of move to Saudi and you live in these compounds. And my dad's company paid for, family holidays. So every school vacation and, Christmas break and stuff like that, my parents were like, oh my God, we're going to go travel the world and see these places that we've never been. So I lived there for 13 years, so I got to see a big part of the world by the time I left Saudi. And I think that really, really did instill in me this love of, just adventure and travel to these far-flung places and like thinking about being like Indiana Jones and, that kind of thing. I have an older brother who was in Saudi with me, and he's 7 years older than me. And I think he very much has that adventurous spirit. So when we were going on all these kind of holidays and stuff, we were, I think, quite mischievous and, just trying to seek out these kind of crazy adventures and to the places we were in. And I always thought I fell in love with it. I just thought it was so exciting. And I don't know how much you've traveled, but definitely, when you travel a bit, it just kind of opens your eyes into thinking, oh my God, there's so much more at the to, see and experience. And so it just kind of, for me, it was definitely kind of like I just got hooked. And then when I moved back to Canada, I, went to high school, and then I ended up getting a bachelor degree in outdoor recreation, which everyone makes fun of me for. They kind of like not a real degree, but it was the closest thing to something I was really interested in. I loved adventures in the outdoors, and so I was like, great, I'll get my bachelor's in outdoor recreation, and I'll become an outdoor guide, leading adventures into the wilderness. And then it was in college that I took my first photography elective. And for me, it was like lightning striking. I was like, oh my God, I can actually take my camera on my adventures and document them. So it was just really this, melding my passions, really, art and outdoor adventure. And not having no idea where that was going to go, because I think, at the time, being a outdoor photographer was not even, I don't even know if it was a real thing. Like, people weren't making much money, and definitely something my parents weren't promoting me to do. So I just all I knew is I just wanted to do stuff that really kind of fueled my fire in that got me really passionate about doing, and that I really enjoyed doing. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And then after university, I started leading outdoor trips in British Columbia, and just, always taking my camera with me. And I started raft guiding in Alaska, again, taking my camera with me. And just, I loved these experiences I was having in the wilderness, and they were really kind of profound to me. I could tell they were like really important experiences, were kind of like shaping my life. And I think being able to document them with my camera was kind of like was a really neat way to like share these with other people. It wasn't necessarily in a bragging, for sure, not in a bragging way. I didn't want to like say, how like social media is like, hey, now look at where I am. It was just like these experiences were really amazing. And I think I wanted to share them to kind of like inspire others to, get out into the outdoors and get out into the wilderness. And then, from there, I just was outdoor guiding. I ended up quitting guiding because so I just kind of felt like I was getting pressure from like my family, or not even my family, because my family's always been really supportive, but like more like societal pressures, I would say, to kind of get a real job. I feel like that age after college, there's a lot of, particularly in the US, because there's usually so much debt going into school, but just like this pressure to like, what are you going to do with your life? And what are you going to be? Like, there's this kind of too much pressure in that, especially at that age. But anyway, so I ended up moving to Vancouver, Canada, and I got a job as a photo editor at a big outdoor retail company in Canada called Mountain Equipment Co-op. And so I did, the responsible office job, 9 to 5 thing, being an editor, living in the city. And I was like, I think I wanted to see what it was like, to see how much I liked it or disliked, and just felt like it was, in order for me to really figure out what I wanted to do, I kind of needed to check that box,
Sure.
So I did that for a few years. And then, so this is a long answer to your question.
That's okay. We've got all the time in the world.
Okay. So I was doing that for a few years, and I was dating a guy who was he was a bush pilot in Alaska, and he did a lot of fly-in surf expeditions, and he was a paraglider. And he kept saying, he would come visit me in Vancouver, and he would just say, oh my God, this job is just like sucking your soul, And after I learned a lot while doing it, but after a few years, I wasn't really learning anything anymore. And I had a really hard time of looking at these photos of all these people doing, being in the places that I wanted to be in. And I've just felt like my life was kind of passing me by in this office. I could just kind of see into the future and see like 10 years going by, and because it was the safe choice. I just see like all this time going by and not really much changing. um and I just thought, oh my god, like I think he's so right. I totally need to you know change this up. And I knew the only way I could was by quitting and kind of like jumping off the deep end, forcing myself to figure out the next step. So I quit my job. And my last day of work, I got a phone call. I was supposed to, like at noon, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine that said my boyfriend had died in a paragliding accident.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was like this huge kind of, yeah, huge event that,
Sure.
and I think, at the time I'd never experienced like grief of a lost one very close to me, so it was a big traumatic event for me. And then um so everybody was pressuring me to get my job back, get my apartment back, and just get my life back. And I just was like, you know what, I can't. Like I just felt like that would be moving backwards, not forwards. And he definitely didn't want me to take my job back. So I just kind of felt like, no, I need to do something totally different. Um, anyway, so I ended up taking a few months off, going on a road trip down the west coast of the States, and I was just spent a lot of time by myself and paragliding and surfing and doing these things that he and I were going to do, and just spending that time to myself. Um, and then I kind of did that for a little while, and then I ended up about a year later, I ended up meeting somebody who said to me, "Hey, do you want to do these sailing adventures in the South Pacific?" And I was like, "Hell yeah!" And I had like zero sailing experience. I didn't even know if I liked it, and I just knew that, hey, you don't get to ask that question very much, so I can always like bail and come back and be where I am right now, which is like trying to figure out my life and what I should do next. And but I can't always like go sailing in the South Pacific, or at least I thought I couldn't at that time. Anyway, so I did that. I took the plunge. I went to New Zealand. And so this guy was running these surf charters in the South Pacific on a monohull, and I went to New Zealand and helped with a big refit before the season started. And then our first we left New Zealand for Vanuatu, and it was a 10-day passage. And it was okay. It wasn't too bad. And I think, I learned pretty quickly that I got pretty seasick. And then immediately when we got to Vanuatu, we had to go to Fiji to pick up some clients. And it was going against the trade winds, and the weather was supposed to be horrible. But we kind of had to do it because we had to get there by a specific time. And it ended up being the worst sailing passage of my life. We ended up getting in like torrential. We were stuck under the this convergence zone of just horrible weather. It's like a band of horrible weather for 10 days, and it was torrential rains. We had 40-foot seas. The captain ended up getting malaria and was delusional. We had like $40,000 to $50,000 worth of damage. It was just insane. I remember there was so much, not only wet from the waves, but just like we were in torrential rains too. So I remember like being on watch, standing like almost up to your waist in just water in the cockpit. Like it was just like that much water, and you're drenched all the time, and everybody was seasick, and nobody could eat, and you couldn't sleep because every side was as wet as everything outside. We almost lost the mast. Yeah, it was like this crazy passage. And I remember we even plotted like how we could like ram it into a reef and get like helied out, because we were just like, how do we make this end? You know, like you just, it was like so bad. And I remember we finally crept into Fiji, 10 days later. And it was just like, I was just like that. Why would anybody do this? You know, like I just couldn't even imagine why anybody would do this. And yeah, so I was also so seasick the whole time. And I had the first mate throw up on me. And oh, it was just like, you can't, it was just, yeah, it was bad.
It's funny to me that after an experience like that, have only gone on more and probably more out there adventures since, and it really kind of lit a fire. As bad as the experience may have been, or at least as trying as the experience may have been, it only made you want to do it more.
Well, somehow, in some kind of a sick and twisted way, yes. But anyway, I got to Fiji, and I thought, okay, I'm just gonna get a plane, go home. This sucks. I don't know why anybody would do this. But then after like a day and a half, just kind of sleeping in the hotel, and I just thought, you know what? It's just this is just such a cool opportunity in terms of adventure and exploration. I was like, I can't quit this quickly. I need to really kind of see it through. I knew that if I went home, I'd be really disappointed in myself, and I didn't want to have any regret about kind of quitting so soon. So I was like, no, I gotta stick this out longer. And it ended up being 10 years. I stuck with it for 10 years and created a kiteboarding business with it, and that was really also the beginning of my photography career in a lot of ways. So when I started sailing, I was just like, this is now my opportunity to really pursue photography seriously if I want to do it, because I was just like, we were going into all these amazing places, and we specialized in remote locations, and I just thought, yeah, it's now or never. You know, this is the perfect opportunity. And so I just started taking pictures. I got a really good camera and just started, way better than my old camera that I had on my ventures. I just kind of upgraded, all new gear, and I was just like, hey, this is it. I'm taking the plunge. And yeah, so I just, from there, it was just like this progression really of kind of just taking pictures of all the places we were. And then we ended up having a lot of, when I started the kiteboarding catamaran business, we started having a lot of pro athletes on board, a lot of kiteboarders and pro kiteboarders and surfers and stuff like that. So I was able then to start taking pictures of these athletes in these incredible places. So it gave me this kind of advantage, and not only good as a practice training ground, but also having this content that these magazines might be interested in, right? Because they love publishing pictures of pro athletes doing their thing in cool places. So I just started submitting to some of these magazines, and when you start submitting, you kind of learn fairly quickly what they like, what they don't like, and then like how to submit and all that kind of stuff. And I learned a lot about submissions and stuff from my photo editing in my office job. So I think it was a good combination. And then, just slowly getting more published over that time. And at the same time, refining my skills, like just always trying to get better. It was definitely not overnight. It took a lot of time, number of years. And then I think, just as you get published more and more, then it's easy to get, that just grows. It kind of falls, right? And then as far as National Geographic, so they ended up, they saw my stuff, I don't know where, and they ended up contacting me to use some of my pictures. And I think that's where the beginning of my relationship with National Geographic started. And I think that's a kind of an important point to tell people, because that's probably the number one question I get all the time is like, how do you get in with National Geographic? And I always tell people like, just focus on your stuff, and try to always get better at what you're doing, and like just focus on the stuff you're really passionate about, and just make sure you're putting it out into the world. But if you're just doing you to the best of your ability, whatever you're shooting, and people will find you, like National Geographic will find you. And otherwise it can be quite very tricky to get in with them. I don't think you can just send them money. A lot of people think, oh, can I just get a contact and send them an email? I'm like, no, I've never heard of it working that way. I mean, it might have a while ago for some people, but it just doesn't work that way. So, I mean, you can imagine how many people try to do that,
Sure. Well, and their model has changed over time, right?
Yeah.
Because they used to be more staff photographers and have a handful of people on staff, and now it's more or less freelance contributors. Is that right?
It is. Yep. There's no more staff photographers. Yeah, so it's and you can imagine that it's a way more competition now in terms of just the industry in general. So
sure.
Yeah. So that's kind of how it all began, and it's just kind of been a kind of a progression since then to now. Yeah.
It's funny because the through line for a lot of people at your level seems to be this kind of hero's journey that kicked everything off. For you, this sailing around the world. For Chase Jarvis, a backpacking trip through Europe. For Chris Burkard, California Surf Project. And for everyone, there's this moment where they kind of forego a past life of sorts and decide to make that big change. So I'm sure that was terrifying.
I think it's like taking the leap, I mean, we're all, I think if you look at, most a lot of the stories, it's like, they took the leap, they took the risk to just kind of dive in and do it. And to be honest with you, every time I've done that in my life, it's paid off way more than taking like the safe road. So now I have trust in it, which is good. But in the beginning, it's particularly hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. So in terms of the commercial viability of being a National Geographic photographer or an editorial contributor in general, editorial is not known for being the most lucrative path in photography. And so how have you kind of MacGyvered your career in a way that has been not only a good way to find new audiences and sort of build a community around your work, but also to open up different income streams in your business and move into whether it's commercial work or sponsorships or whatever that might look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely an evolving thing. Especially when I was on the boat, I would say most of my income was in terms of photography was editorial at the time, because there were so many magazines, and that was they're always hungry for content, so it was a lot easier back then, editorial. And of course that's faded out, so you have to kind of adapt to the changes, and of course the onset of social media. And at first you don't even know how well, what that's going to look like in a couple of years, or how that's, how much energy you should put into doing that, or, because you initially don't think it will amount to much, I mean, I think in the early years, it was just like, so what, who would have known it would, for people with a ton of followers, like what it does for them. But so I would say, just trying. It's all about adapting. And I think for me now, it's definitely forced me to diversify as much as I can. And I think the pandemic as well has really kind of thrown a wrench in the works in a lot of ways. But for me, yeah, I get my revenue streams now are like a bit editorial, definitely minority now, but I have like print sales, and now I've expanded. I've started doing workshops in different countries. Um, Definitely social media influencer endorsements, commercial work for sure, because those kind of go hand in hand. Um, and sponsorships, definitely. I'm just trying to say, and then like, when you're image licensing it would be another one.
Okay.
So yeah, it's now it's just a combination of all those things and trying to kind of dial in all those different revenue streams, and really realizing how important that diversity is. It's that it was a lot more when I think back more, you would get contacted a lot to do assignments in general for different magazines. And now that's not like, it's not really the case anymore. Like you got to go find your own stuff and go pitch your own stuff and be really proactive. I think the days of kind of like, waiting around for people to get send you somewhere to do something are definitely limited. So yeah, you just have to, it's completely changed now. And I really enjoy it because it makes you hustle, but it's kind of like, wow, now I can just really do the things I want to work on and what I want to do. So like, how do I dream big, and what are those things, and how do I go after them? And that's pretty exciting, really, in my mind, because it's just like, wow, I can just create the world I want to create, and work on these things that really kind of get my fire going. So yeah,
So
that's
what,
exciting.
yeah. Yeah. So what does that world look like that you want to create? What are some personal projects that are either in progress right now or coming down the pike that you've had your sights set on that you're really excited to be working
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of projects that I'm excited about doing. But I think in the immediate future is I've always wanted to do these long motorcycle journeys on the like Tibetan plateau, and do kind of like slow journalism. So not only have this like a great adventure on the motorcycle, but really kind of go slowly, do like slow journalism, find these cool stories along the way. Because there's just so many, yeah, amazing experiences and people and stories that you do find. So I would love to create that, those kinds of trips, and I want to start a YouTube channel just to kind of document all that. And I just think that would be really, really fun. It's been on my bucket list for a really long time. And in 2019, I had a tumor scare, where I was told I had 1 to 4 years to live, and then they got the tumor out, and they were like, "Oh, it's benign. You're totally fine." um, so, and that was right before the pandemic, and I just feel like between that and the pandemic, I just like I want to start crossing stuff off my bucket list, and again, I feel like in a lot of ways I'm, taking this leap like I did in the beginning of my career with sailing, and I'm excited for that. I think that would be really fun. And then I've also been kind of working on some long-term projects, but train hopping is another big passion of mine that I like to do, and that's definitely a personal project. And I hope to keep that going in different places, and that's probably going to combine it with my motorcycle trip, because if I meet some train hoppers along the way in these different crazy countries, I'm gonna I want to partake in some of that.
Sure.
Yeah, and then so I think that's what I'm going to be focusing on in the near future, and then see where that takes me. And there's always like, you know, there's going to be a lot of interruptions with that because I'll end up doing different commercial jobs or stop to do other work. But yeah, that's my big passion project coming up.
Awesome. So when you're planning out these adventures, whether it was the sailing trip, maybe it was given that it was in the early part of your career, may not apply, but nowadays when you're planning these adventures and personal work, is there a sort of master plan at work where you're considering, X adventure will hopefully lead to Y opportunity or something along those lines? How are you connecting the dots between that work that you're doing on your own dime and the work that you're getting hired to do?
Yeah. Um, to be honest, now I think now I I'm just more concerned about you know doing the I have this overwhelming feeling that life is so short and I want to do so much and I don't want to wait. I just want to do it. And I really I mean my camera really does allow me to pursue my like curiosity and I love that. And I think a lot of it is I don't overly plan because I love the serendipity in life. Like all my best experiences are not really having a plan. And I think that's going to be a big part of my motorcycling is like I love getting lost and seeing what I find. And it's always so surprising and exciting, so much more exciting for me and rewarding for me. So I love kind of being in that place. I just find when I create too much expectation through planning, things are never go as I kind of want them to or expect them to. And then so I feel like I'm always in more of a state of being let down than surprised and amazed by life, you know? So I don't have a lot of planning involved and I'm more focused on having these um, just kind of profound, amazing experiences in my life that just give me a lot of personal reward. And then telling these stories along the way, because there's just so many cool ones, and just again sharing them with people and trying to make a difference and getting people inspired and want to protect the planet. And I think that's all kind of encompassed in one big thing. And then I've just found that the more I kind of take the leap into these passion projects, the more the money follows. Um, because I think I do better work in those situations, and I think kind of the passion comes through. Like you work harder and it's just kind of it shows. And so I just find then you end up getting a lot more opportunity out of that as well. So it's kind of in my experience, it's been like a win-win situation, even though I don't know what the outcomes are or even perceived outcomes are. I think the most important part is just taking the leap and having and knowing that, if you do that and you really love what you're doing, then good things will happen. I mean, bad things too, but I try to see the good in the bad things too. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the maybe unfortunate byproducts of trying to sort of follow in people's footsteps through, people that we're seeing through social media and online, following in their footsteps to become professional photographers, for example, is that, and I'm guilty of this myself in some ways, trying to monetize too early, right? Trying to make it a career before the skills are fully honed. So what would you say to someone who maybe hasn't yet busted their chops as a photographer, just doing it for fun, that's trying to sort of leapfrog to the point that it is a primary source of income?
Yeah, I see that all the time. And I just kind of think about when somebody asks me about the money component, I'm like, you're missing the point. because none of it is about the money. Like, to me, still none of it. It's about you know, I love photography so much I cannot not do it. Um, and just pursuing that relentlessly, to be honest. And then if you do that relentlessly, then and you keep improving your craft at the same time, people will start offering you money for this stuff and your services and your photographs. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, okay, this is actually growing. And then like, it's a process. It's definitely not overnight. And then, like, you wean off maybe what your other job was, because this is kind of overtaking your life in not only time wise but monetarily. So then you're like, oh well, now I guess I'm a professional photographer because I'm making most of my income through photography. And I would say, if you ask most photographers, that's the way it goes. It's just pursuing your passion relentlessly. You can't just, like, go take pictures in a cool place and be like, okay, now how do I make the money? It's like, yeah, if you're asking that question to me, you're completely missing the point. It has to be, if it's not an absolute passion of yours, then, and you live, breathe it all the time, I would say maybe this isn't what your profession is supposed to be, because I just think if you have that expectation of money, to me, that's telling me that's not a big enough passion. I think you got to be saying to yourself, like, I can't live without this. I cannot stop doing this. I'm willing to do anything to do this. I'm willing to sleep in my car. I'm willing to, not drink at bars anymore. I'm willing to, sleep in ditches and places. And, like, I did a project a couple of years ago. I was in the jungle in India, and I had rats running all over me all night. And, and for me, yeah, I mean, it's not the funnest night I've ever had, for sure, but for me, it's like all part of the process, and I love that. I love that process. I love that. It's all exciting to me. And like, I'm willing to do those things because I love photography that much. And I would say, yeah, if you're not willing to make all that sacrifice and be relentless in the pursuit of it, then you should probably find something else to do.
Well, I didn't quite have rats crawling all over me. This past weekend, I was taking a trip up to New Hampshire for just a casual trip to do sort of a guided sunrise hike in the White Mountains. And so we were up at 2 a.m. to get to the summit of Mount Lafayette by 5:30. And at the beginning of the hike, and really up until 30 minutes before we were able to summit, you could see every single star in the sky. And just as we're about to crest, these gusts of winds blow clouds in and essentially bring us nothing but whiteout conditions for sunrise, and we got none of it. So I agree with you. The adversity is part of the fun of it. But in those instances where it squanders the photography element, how do you move through that, first of all, but also how do you plan for contingencies around those sorts of environmental factors, whatever they may be, whether it's weather or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's time. It's like it's spending time in a place long enough, I think, or if it's like a seasonal thing, then coming back, to be honest. It's, there's a lot of stuff that I work on that I go back to the place many times. It's not just, a one time thing. And then often when I'm on assignment, like I'm out there for 3 weeks, a month, maybe 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. So yeah, I just, you kind of need to, and every time you're out there, you're learning new stuff. So you're learning, oh, okay, the weather's generally doing this, and this is what it's doing at this time of day, and this is what the people are doing, and this is where, and then seasonally too, exactly. It's kind of the same thing. So I think you have to think about it in those kind of ways rather than, I think, people who are just used to traveling for 10 days at a time. Yeah, their windows are very tiny, and so they either get lucky or they don't. And that's just not the way I travel. I'm there specifically for a certain set of images, and so I have to play the waiting game and be willing to come back many times to kind of make it happen. A lot of the time, and then other times you just kind of accept that you can't get every shot. I mean, that happens to me all the time, and some of them I've missed. Are just, it's so depressing. um, but you just realize there's so many more cool, amazing shots to get, and you can't get them all, and you just try your best and try to do what you can. But yeah, it's definitely not easy.
Yeah, yeah, it was a long drive back, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
When you go into these places, while you don't necessarily want to plan every step of it, do you go in with sort of a vision of the kinds of shots that you
Oh
want
yeah.
to walk away with?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, for
what does
sure.
that process look like? Do you have a shot list? Is it do you mood board it, or is it more just a visualization of sorts?
Yeah, it's a combination. I mood board it. I do a rough shot list. The shot list always changes when you're there on the ground, of course. But it's good to have like a general shot list of the stuff just to kind of go back to go, oh yeah, okay, I need to make sure I get to some more detailed shots of this, or it's just like a checklist, basically an overall checklist, but then you kind of fine tune it when you're on the ground. And I mood board it too because I think that's very helpful. And then I also actually draw. So when I'm starting to get when I'm on location and I start to see like what's happening, and the light and the people and all that kind of stuff, whatever it is, I start to get ideas of different shots I want to get based on the time of day, and then I'll sketch those out, very very rough. But like I kind of want to sketch them out while I'm thinking of them, and then I can always just go, oh yeah, 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 that shot would be great. It's just a reference coming back to it. So it's like it is a combination of all those different things, and
Sure.
just trying to make sure that you're getting all those different angles, because you do end up getting like down these. You get more focused on wanting to get like one or two certain shots, and then you're kind of like, oh yeah, 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 I got to think broader again. Like I have a bigger checklist I need to. So it definitely helps to have that checklist and those reminders.
So
Um,
yeah, so similarly with location scouting, what you cover so much ground in the work that you do. So how do you come across the locations that you're looking to shoot when they're not explicitly given to you on assignment?
yeah, I mean, it's really, I mean, some of it, loosely of it, is doing research on the internet. I'd say a lot of the stuff is just from being out in the world. So often when I'm out working on something, I'm keeping my eyes out for other cool stuff or cool places, or hearing people talk about certain places when you're traveling, kind of all those different things. And then when I'm usually out traveling, I end up usually leads me to other places that I'm pretty interested in going to, or things I'm seeing. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest way. I mean, I think it's pretty hard just kind of like staying at home and trying to find stuff on the internet, because like still the really good stuff isn't really on the internet. You know what I mean? Like because you don't want to go photograph the stuff that everybody's photographing on social media or Instagram. You're trying to go to those places that, you know, not that they haven't been found, but maybe haven't been documented that much, or from a different angle, or from a different storyline, or yeah. So I mean, I remember when I was in the beginning in Nat Geo, the Nat Geo photographer George Steinmetz He's a friend of mine, and I remember asking him about some of the story stuff, and I remember him saying to me, "You just got to go out in the world," and he was totally right. I mean, that it keeps coming back to me all the time. You just got to go, and then that's how you find the stuff. Again, it's again like taking the leap, right? It's having, you know, having that faith that it's going to lead to other things, even though you have no idea at the time what they're going to lead to, and that's where it's just so hard for people to wrap their head around. They're like, but I don't know what to do or where I'm going to go or what I'm going to find. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly right. That's the point, so yeah.
Do you catalog those places just in your mind? Do you have tools or places that you are storing that information to come back to? For example, I use Evernote pretty religiously for that sort of thing. So are there any kind of tools or tactics you have for keeping track of some of that information?
Well, notebooks for sure. Evernote for sure is a good one. And then for mood boarding, I use an app called Milanote, which I've grown to like a lot, especially when I'm working on assignment. It just helps to kind of build the story out visually as I'm taking pictures. And then if I have like mood boards, I can easily just grab stuff I find off the internet or screenshots or whatever and pull that into one big board. So it's kind of all there, and it's just really easy. So yeah, that helps a lot too.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of those things.
Okay. And speaking of things on more of the tactical side, what does your asset management workflow look like when you're traveling on assignment?
Yeah. So mine is, and I'm sure everybody's is different. Mine is I usually have 3 to 4, 5 terabyte hard drives on me, and I use the Western Digital ones because now they're quite small, and I back everything up on 3 different drives, and I kind of keep those in separate bags. And if I'm traveling with someone, I might give them one to travel home with. But I back up all my cards, all the stuff I shoot onto those. And then when I come home, I download them. I have a big kind of Synology. Do you know what those are?
I have one myself, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I put them on all to there so that I can access them remotely if I have to.
Mm-hmm. For people wondering what we're talking about, it's a network attached storage.
Yeah.
So sort of a personal server of sorts.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So because that was one of my problems was like when I was traveling, an editor would email me like, "Oh, hey, can I get this photo?" And I'd be like, "Oh God, I don't have the drives with me," so now I can kind of access my whole archive through there, while I'm traveling. So that's really great. So that's basically how it works for me. I mean, I'm sure there's better ways. It's kind of funny. It's one of those things that once what you've started doing and that you figured out that kind of works for you is a kind of thing. I mean, you end up kind of sticking to it unless somebody, shows you a different way. But yeah, it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah, you get
it would be really cool to see how everybody does it and like which one is the best, most efficient way. But yeah.
Well, I'm not sure we can figure out what the most efficient way is, but I'm hoping to figure out different ways that people are doing it. And
yeah, for sure.
Part of why we're here. So
yeah, and that'd be really interesting information. So yeah. So that nobody really talks about. Nobody really talks about it.
Well, and that's what I've found is that there's a lot of podcasts, a lot of different avenues where people are talking about sort of the motivation to become a photographer or a creative professional in some way. and sort of the psychology behind it, but there's not a lot about the actual tactics or practical element of, what are the numbers? What does it actually look like as a professional photographer, and yeah, in terms of workflows and asset management. I haven't seen a lot of that, and that's kind of what inspired me to start having some of these conversations.
Yeah, no, it's good. It should be talked about more because it is an important part of the process, but yet nobody really sees it as such,
Yeah. So there was something you shared on Instagram the other day that I thought was interesting, and I tagged it just to bring up today. And it was a quote from Carl Jung. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you? So yeah, the quote was, "It was where your fear is, there your task is."
Yeah.
So tell me why that resonates with you, and also, where is your fear these days?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's such a great quote because, yeah, I mean, I think everything in all my experiences in life have just, like I said earlier, it's like every time I've taken that risk or like basically when you take a risk, it's kind of like following your fear, right? And every time I've done that, it's benefited me in so many ways. And I'm not just talking monetarily. I mean, I don't care about money very much. It's not what drives me at all. So when I make decisions, it's definitely not. It's seldomly money decisions. So yeah, it's benefited me in so many ways. Just like personally, I when you are pushing that edge and into fear, your personal growth is huge, and you gain more confidence, you gain more skill, you gain more knowledge, and awareness. And I mean, so it has all these benefits. And so much of our society is the opposite, like so we always trying to take the safe route and the safe thing all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but your life won't be fulfilling if you live the safe way. You gotta do these things that are uncomfortable and scary and risky, because that's where all the growth is. Like, I think in every way, when you have all this personal growth, then the money growth will happen, and all this other stuff will happen. So it all happens there. You know what I mean? So it's like, you got to keep pushing towards it, even though, it's scary and you don't want to. And yeah, it's a big philosophy of mine that's where you're going to find a fulfilling life. You will not find it staying at home, doing the same thing all the time where it just feels comfortable.
So just to come back to, where is your fear these days?
Yeah, where's my fear? Well, honestly, a big fear is like my health going to shit after that tumor scare, which is something that's completely out of my control. It's not like I can go towards that fear, but yeah, that is a fear of mine. I think there's a lot of fear in I think all photographers, we have, you're talking about like different income, like it's always fluctuating. There's never consistency. And I think you have to learn to really like that process. And I think that's as for me, that's always this underlying fear. I think you feel like, oh, there's these moments where you're just not pulling in much income, and you're like, oh my God, like how, I really want to make this lifestyle keep going for me. How do I, how do I do that? I'm not making money, that much money right now. So it's like, or, that kind of thing. And I think the other thing is just feeling like, I don't know, like, how do you, stay true to yourself? Like, for me, it's like staying true to myself and trying to make decisions that aren't, again, like money based, or make decisions based on what I truly want to do in this world. And my other fear is squandering my time and my life, to be honest with you, is is not doing these things. Because I tell you why, like even the pandemic, like we were forced to stay home, and you as humans we're so good at adapting that you get used to staying at home, and you kind of get comfortable staying at home, and you're like, oh, it would be so easy just to keep staying at home. And like that's another fear of mine, that I get too comfortable in my life. I just that I'm squandering my time, and just having all these experiences while I can. And I think that also ties into my health scare too. I think it's even more prominent now. I mean, I've always felt that, but I think it's even more prominent now. Um, yeah, so I think it's a lot of for me, it's a lot of that stuff. It's just like I love my profession, I love my lifestyle, and I want to keep it going, but not getting too comfortable. It's like that. It is that combination.
Yeah. For me, it was a combination of where I was at professionally and a health scare of my own. I was 26 working in city government, which is an undesirable enough place to be at that point. And I was, I came across an irregular heartbeat that I had, and had to have a total of 2 cardiac ablations, and
Oh
decided
wow.
that there was just not a world in which I was going to stay on that escalator to a full
Right.
pension, no matter how comfortable it was.
Yeah.
And so the way that I look at it is there was a straight line path to maybe a desirable future, but what I was doing was getting back to the bottom of that escalator and getting on a different one that was a steeper trajectory and took me to an even better, more fulfilling place, like you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, as a escalator. Um, the thing though, I think if you really love the process of what you're doing, like it's basically being present, right? Like if you just love the process of it all, then there's no like pinnacle. Do you know what I mean? It's more like like a sideways airport escalator rather than a bottom to top escalator. Do you know what I
Sure.
mean? And I think that's really important, because you got to really, yeah, be in the present and love what you're doing in the moment, and not being like hung up on these outcomes that take you out of the present. Because I think that really, again, creates these expectations, and that you get let down, and you're kind of living in this, a little bit of an unfulfilling world, and I think that's sad too. So
Yeah.
I think you got to redefine to what like society of course considers success monetarily, but I don't at all. And I think that rewiring that really helps me a lot into yeah, just not being so hard on myself, but also just learning to love where I'm at, and also love not knowing where it's going to lead. Like I find that very exciting, um which I think for a lot of people is scary. But you can't, nobody knows what the outcomes are, so it's like, why waste your energy you know
Yeah.
on trying to predict what they are. I mean, I think you can have goals for sure, which is great, but if you're loving the process towards the goal, then you're always winning.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
You may hear my cat in the background trying to break down the door, so excuse that. That brings to mind something that I've tried to be better about recently, and that's with my goal setting process. I've never been a big fan of New Year's resolutions or anything of that sort, but trying to still have a benchmark for myself
Yeah.
to keep going.
Yeah, for sure.
And so not completely throwing out the idea of desired outcomes, but trying to connect each of those to a sort of process related goal too.
Right.
So if there's a goal of adding 10 new people to my email list, then the process related goal being reaching out to another 30 potential contacts that might be interested, and hoping that a third of them decide to convert and join that list.
Right.
Are there any sort of processes and process related goals that you are trying to follow more diligently to lead to some of those outcomes, even if that's not sort of the end all be all?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think they are, and I think that's important. I mean, I just kind of try to break stuff down into steps and see if I can just like move the needle in that regard, but also enjoying every kind of step along the way in a lot of ways, if that makes sense. But um, yeah, I definitely don't have. I think I definitely know. Yeah, I just have these general outcomes or goals, and I'm trying to, like, every decision I make, is it moving me towards that or away from that? I think it's kind of a basic kind of way I think about it in my mind, is like when these, whatever I want to do, or the opportunities that come my way, is it moving me towards it or away from it? And if it's away, then it's kind of easy. Then I'm like, oh yeah, I feel really good about saying no to that, because it's not moving me towards that desired outcome down the way. And I know it seems basic, but I find that very helpful.
So do you have any other advice for aspiring photographers trying to become professional, and more specifically those maybe looking to contribute to a publication like National Geographic or other editorial publications?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I honestly think that the really everybody wants to know the secret sauce. I mean, I think the secret sauce is you take photos of the stuff you're really passionate about and get as good as you can. Like, I mean, that's the amazing thing about photography, is that you can always get better. I think even at no matter what level, like I was with Steve McCurry in Italy in the summer, and um, just watching Steve, he's just always in the process of trying to improve his images, and he shoots constantly, like constantly. I've never been around someone who shoots as much as him, in terms of, like, he walks nonstop every day looking for the photos. And he may only take 10 pictures in the day, but he's actively out there doing it all the time. It's amazing. And following his curiosity, trying to take better pictures. And he was like, you got to practice every day. And so, yeah, you gotta be relentless about it. But in order to be relentless, you got to really find the stuff that you're passionate about, and um, go after it. Just you got to keep plugging away at it, and then just keep trying to get better. And I mean, I think it's particularly hard nowadays, because we're inundated with, all these images. So I think another thing would be to try to try not to necessarily emulate other people. It's try to figure out what your style and what the way you see the world is, and help refine that angle. So have your unique style within your, photography. But that takes time to develop, and that takes time to understand. I mean, I think in the beginning it's really good to emulate others, because I think it helps you learn a lot. But then I think you want to move on from that, and you want to, really focus on your own thing. And then in order to stand out in kind of the sea, is try to find just really unique stories. Or it could be a story that's already done, but maybe do it from a unique angle that nobody's ever seen before. um I just think there's so much opportunity when you can do that. I mean, I always see these amazing, cool photo projects, or that the people, like, just yeah, they just take a unique angle on it, and they shoot it in a unique way, and it really stands out. And yeah, so I mean, and unfortunately, I think in this day and age, you kind of have to be a part of the social media realm, and put your work out there, and let it be seen, of course, because no matter what you're taking, if nobody sees it, um, yeah, probably won't go anywhere. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just like a combination of those things, and you got to be relentless and you got to pursue it. And I think you can't think about the money. I mean, you should not, if you're an amateur photographer, to me, you should not be thinking about the money. That should not be your driving force at all. You just got to do it for the love of it and just try to be as, again, improving your craft along the way. I always tell people when I was a photo editor at Mountain Equipment Co-op, I used to go to these parties or a party, and then people would ask me what I do, and I was like, "Oh, I'm a photo editor for Mountain Equipment Co-op," and they'd be like, "Oh, can I send you these pictures? I took these amazing pictures from my backcountry ski trip this weekend," and I was like, "Sure, yeah, send them to me." But like, I knew as soon as they said that, they would be total shit because like you gotta. It's so hard to take really good pictures. And if you haven't figured that out, then you're not far enough along in the process to figure that out, to just randomly say, "Oh yeah, I took a lot of amazing pictures." Like, I mean, I think out of my pictures, there's maybe one or two I like in my whole career so far. And it's just because like, I think as you improve the craft, you realize how taking good pictures is really difficult. And I think when you're very critical of yourself and you're trying to find ways to improve it, you're always, you're just thinking about that from that kind of angle. So, yeah, you got to be really critical and just always. I mean, I think with that mindset, like, how can I make this stuff better? And yeah, I just I don't know. Hope that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. It definitely does. And it's refreshing to hear that even someone with the portfolio that you have, you still look at a lot of your pictures and aren't content with them, because I feel that every day. And I think a lot of us do. And there's always something that you feel you can do better and
Right.
to make it better. I heard Corey Rich, the climbing photographer, speak in Philadelphia about a year ago, I think. And he said, in your career, you're going to take a lot of mediocre photographs. You're going to take a handful of good photographs, and you'll maybe take just a few great ones. Yeah. And so I think that's the goal, is to chase those few great ones, but to just be refined enough in your craft to consistently be good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Like I think it can sound quite depressing for when you hear somebody say, "Oh yeah, like I may like one of my photographs." But for me, it's not depressing at all. It's very motivating for me to go out and take better pictures, and I really love that about photography. I don't find it. It doesn't dissuade me for sure. It just kind of motivates me, which is good. But I mean, I think if people can realize that, then it may be a little bit humbling, and then they can say, "Oh, okay, maybe my photographs, maybe I need to revisit this. Like maybe they're not as amazing as I thought. So how can I make them better?" Yeah. So yeah, no, it's a combination of those things, for amateur photographers. If you really want to become a professional, and then sacrifice, I think, is another one, in terms of, there's a lot of people who ask me, like, I live in Seattle and I work 3 jobs, and how can I become a professional photographer? And I'm like, well, you gotta leave Seattle. Like, I mean, you're living in a place that's so expensive, that's not giving you. You can never get ahead to go do anything that you really want to do. And I think that can be hard for a lot of people who live in these, really big cities where the cost of living is so high. You just have like no spare time or no way to get away or to save money to go anywhere, or so that I would, and that can be easier said than done, but I think it comes back again to taking that leap, to maybe, shake up your life some way. Maybe, go live abroad for a year, or go travel for 6 months, or, go live somewhere that doesn't have such high cost of living. So it allows you to kind of save up some more money to maybe pursue some of these stories that you want to do wherever they are. Because you also need the time, right? And if you're, working 3 jobs, you don't even have the time. So yeah, it kind of has to be that combination. I mean, I like so much of Asia. Like I used to live in Indonesia for a while, and it was fantastic because the cost of living is so low there, and you can live like a king. And you know what people are paying here in the States for a month's rent, you could live there for, oh God, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months. And then you're in this kind of really cool location, and there's so much to photograph and so many cool experiences. And but you gotta be willing to take that leap, to get on a plane, to go and or make the move, or you kind of have to get out of that comfort zone and follow that fear, and that's how you start. So yeah.
You mentioned Steve McCurry earlier, and I'm so glad you brought him up, because he's by far one of my favorite photographers, because he's just got so much depth to every single photo that he takes. And I was looking at it's incredible.
He's masterful. Yes.
Yeah, just bringing out the emotion of the moment and capturing action in its own way. And I looked at a photo that he shared the other day of some fields in, I don't even remember where, but it was somewhere in Asia. And it's 4 incredible photos in one, just with the different layers that it has. And so that's someone who's definitely figured out their craft. I'd be curious to hear how many of those he actually would consider great photos, but like everyone, probably not many.
Yeah, and I definitely don't think he sees them that way.
No.
He's not seeing a photo as like a great photo or not a great photo. It's just like, I think he's seeing ways that it worked, and then areas he can improve on. But yeah, I mean, you really, he's a lifetime of shooting all the time, and that's why, I mean, he's mastered the craft for sure in my mind, but in his mind, I doubt if he has. So, but yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's funny how that self-criticism works sometimes.
Yeah.
So, Jody, what's next for you professionally?
Right now, actually, I'm going to India soon. I'm going to start my motorcycle trip.
Awesome.
So that's what I'm going to do. I just worked on a commercial project for a Mazda a few weeks ago, and now I'm prepping and planning to go to India. I was supposed to go to Mongolia too, but that's been canceled because of the restrictions in China and the COVID restrictions. Things are starting to come back, but they're still changing a lot. So in terms of like uncertainty, people just don't know what's going to get shut down again. I think with these, Chinese restrictions, that's, causing a lot of uncertainty as well, but in the war, of course. But yeah, so that's on my docket next. That's what I'm planning for right now. So I'm excited.
That's amazing.
I'm ready to do a big trip.
Yeah. Well, certainly be safe and enjoy. It sounds like an incredible experience.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So where can people find you if they're wanting to see your work or learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah, they can find me on my Instagram account, which is at Jody MacDonald Photo. And then my website is jodymacdonaldphotography.com. And those are, I'm on Twitter, Jody Photo, and Facebook, Jody MacDonald Photography. So yeah, those are kind of the main areas you could find
awesome.
Me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Jody MacDonald with an A.
M-A-C. Yeah.
Common misconception, I imagine.
Yeah, right. Thanks for pointing that out.
Of course. Well, Jody, it's been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you, setting the time aside and having this conversation. Hopefully we get to do it again sometime. But in the meantime, I really hope you enjoy your journey across Asia and get some incredible images while you're at it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure chatting with you today, and yeah, hopefully we can do it again sometime in the future when I'm maybe more along in my motorcycle trip. We can chat about that.
I would love it. I would love that.
Okay.
Awesome.
Great.
All right. Well, Jody, take care, and yeah, we'll chat again soon.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
All right. Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey guys, Brad again. Just one more thing before you go. If you want to hear more about my own work and journey as a creative, head to bradvasala.com/rundown. That's RUNDOWN. Become a subscriber and receive a short email from me every month with stories from behind the lens, recent travels, and digital access to a quarterly catalog of my latest work. It's a light read, easy to sign up, and over 100 like-minded creatives have already joined. So don't miss out. Go to bradvasala.com/rundown to sign up today.